Coach, let's talk about, you go into a place that is very traditionally hard to win at in Salem. I get it's not Salem of, the heyday, but hey, a win at Salem's a win at Salem. Talk about what went right for the Hilltoppers.
We got on the board early. I think it was with all those thousands of people there on the Salem side, it was important to kind of to jump on those guys quick. We started the game with a turnover on kickoff team, and we scored 2 plays later. Got a 3-and-out on defense, and then scored 2 plays after that. So you blinked and it was 14-0, and I think just getting on the board early was a good kind of way to get the momentum on our side and to kind of cancel out the crowd.
Now, we were both at the Glass Heritage game last year, obviously, and you get 2 big plays on special teams that really felt like it turned momentum for the Hilltoppers. I don't think people on a normal scale understand how big special teams can be. Talk
Yeah.
about that real quick.
Especially early in the season, man.
Yep.
I think every coach walks into game one and it's like, you got your fingers crossed because you haven't had a lot of live reps on special teams. One thing we kind of pride ourselves on is on Wednesday, our starting kickoff group goes against the JV kickoff return group. And I think, using the JV groups and using the good on good between the JV and the varsity on special teams, it gives you a better scout look.
But it's
I
so
think
hard to rep that in practice. You and I
it's
both know
so
that.
hard to rep it. And I think it's also so hard to teach your guys how important that third phase of the game is.
Yep.
And it's usually not until you've made a bunch of mistakes that you realize how important it is to do these things right. And, we missed the field goal on Friday. We had a botch snap on an extra point, so we still didn't play a perfect game. But I think, opening the game up with the fumble by Salem is not the way that anybody wants to start. So hopefully it gets better. I know it will get better with reps, and as the season goes on, those in-game reps on special teams are just invaluable.
Yeah, before we talk about PH, let's debate the special teams again real quick. I would say in high school football, missed field goals are going to happen because
Right.
your chances are it's not college or the NFL. You don't have probably the greatest kicker in the world. And I'm saying everybody. I'm not just pinpointing, I'm not throwing you under the bus or anything like that. But most people are not going to have a kicker that's automatic. Because
Correct.
the other thing too, like you said, if you miss an extra point, well, you need 3 people to be perfect. Well, maybe more than 3. You need a perfect hold, you need a perfect snap, and you need the line to block. So there's 4. 4
That's
things you need to
exactly right.
happen.
And you don't get a lot. And, I think the difference, too, is in, college and NFL, whoever that holder is, that's probably the only job he has. And that's the only thing that he gets reps at doing all week long. So he's probably a little sharper than whoever you're bringing in on a Friday night to come hold. And
Right.
usually it's a kid that's already played a bunch of football. So, there's just so much up in the air with special teams. I know for us, we always focus on the defensive special teams first. Our kickoff return team doesn't have to be great, but our kickoff team's got to be pretty good. Same with punt team and punt return. We can deal with not having a whole bunch of punt return yards early in the season, but that punt team got to go down there and cover.
Did you play special teams in high school or college?
I did. I was the type of kid you could not get off the field for kickoff team in college. That was like my pride and joy was running down the field on kickoff team.
Did you have to do any like extra point or anything?
I did not do any extra point or field goal stuff.
So kickoff, I think, is a little bit different because, like you said, you can almost be a madman and just run down the field, and your purpose is to tackle the guy with the ball, pretty much. Agree?
That's exactly right. Yes, sir.
When you're kicking an extra point or even punting, guess what? It's almost like the offensive line part 2 because you've got to block that guy. And I would argue I'll take my quarterback getting a sack every day of the week over that punter getting crushed.
That's exactly right. All day long. All day long.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not auditioning for any special teams coaching. So if you think I'm smart, go ahead and put that away because I'm not. What else went right, though, against Salem?
We ran the ball effectively. Last year that was kind of a big focus for us all season long was, being able to establish an identity running the ball. I think we only had 2 games last year out of 11 that we ran for over 100 yards, which is crazy to say. We ran for 297 yards on Friday against Salem. We took care of the football. We didn't have any turnovers on offense. We only threw 9 passes, but we completed 7 of the 9. So I thought our quarterback, played pretty efficiently with taking care of the ball. But just happy that we were able to establish an identity up front, and I wouldn't say impose our will, but we were able to kind of run the ball and get the looks that we wanted to and capitalize for what we saw in the box. So I think that's kind of a major step into what our goals have been all off season long.
Two more questions before we get to PH. What was, and I can't remember media day, so please give me some grace here. What was the biggest question you had going into the season about your team?
I think if we would be physical enough, to do what we wanted to do on offense, which is run the ball, and if we would be physical enough to withstand other teams' run game. And I think we did a lot of things right in the weight room this offseason, but you never really know until you go against somebody with a different jersey on. And for us, Friday was a good first step in that direction.
Well, with that being said, is that question answered, or is that still not totally
I don't
answered?
think it's necessarily answered. Salem kind of did what they wanted to do in that second half, and we played 13 different defensive linemen. We had a lot of guys cramping, and a lot of guys having to come in and out of the game. So I was proud at us being able to play so many different guys and having so many that were, focused and ready to play. But I still think that, with the schedule that we play and in the district we play in, we always say your belly's going to get tested because teams are going to test you in A gap on both sides of the ball. And you've got to be pretty strong in the belly.
Always tough to acclimate a new quarterback. I guess maybe you had a little bit of a blessing with Max being hurt last year in a way because you got some other people out there. What do you think, though, of quarterbacking situation?
I thought that he did a good job managing the game. Jaleel had played some valuable reps last year, especially down the stretch. He's still getting used to the quarterback position. He's not one of those kids that's played quarterback his whole life. So he's learning a lot of the ins and outs, and he's getting some of the moxie that's involved with playing quarterback. I was just so happy at how he led our team, and even with a very calm and smooth demeanor. He ran the ball very well. He made the right reads when we were throwing the ball. He's a heck of an athlete, so we always know that. But I think that what he needed to show the most growth in was, being a quarterback and managing, the 10 other troops that's out there on the field. And I thought he did a great job of doing that Friday night.
Who was quarterbacking when you played in high school and college?
When I played in high school, I was quarterbacking.
Okay.
And so I got a soft spot for the position.
We're going to disqualify you then.
Yeah, right. When I was in college, our quarterback's name was Corey Sadler. He was from St. Christopher High School in Richmond, Virginia. And he was one of those guys that the whole team looked up to him, and he did things right. And I think you always want a quarterback that everybody can cheer for. And I think Jaleel is taking some great steps in that direction of being the kind of leader that can rally everybody, not just his receivers, not just his offensive linemen, but everybody on our team.
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, Jamar Lovelace, when he was quarterback in the Seminole District, with all due respect, is probably not number one in the record book for anything quarterbacking wise. Corey Sadler, I don't think, is number one in Division III record books for quarterbacking. But you mentioned a good thing about Sadler. People looked up to him as a leader. And I know people probably looked up to you as a leader even in high school. And I know people are looking at you as a leader now. But how important is it that, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but if Jaleel's still getting comfortable quarterbacking, his leadership's got to be beyond comfortable. We can learn the physical stuff as we go.
That's exactly right. If Corey Sadler called me right now tonight, at any point in time of the night, I'd wake up, pick up the phone, and say, what do you need?
Right.
And I think that's the kind of lasting effect that you want to have on people. And I think the thing about quarterback too is that everything that you do is on full display, and even in the moments where things don't go exactly your way, how you respond in those moments is also very important for your leadership status. And I think Jaleel is very much learning to kind of keep even keel, through the highs, through the lows. And sometimes you got to be the first one to pick someone up. Sometimes you got to take blame, even when it might not have been directly your fault. And he's learning kind of all those nuances of the position that has such an effect on the whole team.
Two people are going to get blamed the most for a loss: the head coach and the quarterback.
Always.
Yep.
That will never change. Always. That's
Well,
exactly right.
and I think as a quarterback and as a head coach, you've got to have those big shoulders because, like you mentioned, Jaleel's, you want him to take responsibility, even if it's not his fault. You can't be jumping up and down, being demonstrative with officials sometimes because guys, your own teammates are going to look at you. How did you react when things went maybe not like you wanted them to?
I had my dad was a drill sergeant in the military, and I grew up a little different than most when it comes to the discipline aspect of
Mm-hmm.
things. So I think it was instilled in me at a very early age to, not just pay attention to how you're acting in the good moments and bad moments, but just also knowing that the power and the responsibility of the position. Not many people. We got a lot of offensive linemen who played great on Friday night, and not many people know about them or know their name yet. The quarterback's name is going to be written in the paper, whether it's for 4 touchdowns or 4
Yep.
interceptions. And that responsibility is not always something that young guys want, especially when all eyes are on you. I think that's something that took some getting used to for Jaleel, and I think he's becoming much more comfortable in that role and with that responsibility.
Well, definitely big thank you to your dad for his service as well. Now, with that being said, you learned discipline from the drill sergeant. Can you teach discipline, or does a quarterback just have to, I don't want to say learn it on their own?
I think it's a healthy mix of both. I think there's a lot of lessons as a coach. Kind of like toughness, right? Like I don't know if you could necessarily teach toughness, but it is one of those things that you can take steps towards. Helping someone understand what toughness means and pointing out the times and areas that you need it most. And I feel the same way about discipline. It's one of those qualities that it's you wish somebody kind of naturally had it, but your job as the coach is to also show the path and reaching and getting to more discipline. And even with little tangible things like, if practice starts at 3 o'clock, then, we want you ready at 3 o'clock, not 3:01, not still putting on your cleats at 2:59, but,
Right.
how about being ready 5 minutes early and
Yep.
helping other guys get ready, and those are the little things that we try to do on a daily basis that shows kind of what discipline and what leadership and responsibility is all about.
I'm going to give you the offensive line floor. Talk about the offensive line and who stood out on Friday of Super.
I thought we have our right tackle, Manny Moats. He played center all for us last year, and he's out at right tackle right now. He's kind of the blind side. I know most people's left tackle is the blind side, but Jalil is left-handed, so Manny's playing his blind side at right tackle. And Manny had a strong game. Right beside him at right guard is James Taylor, who was another guy last year who, him and Manny took a lot of lumps on that offensive line last year, and both those guys were very determined all offseason. They get bigger and stronger and more physical. They did a great job. And then we got a sophomore playing left guard. His name is Sylveon Parker. And he's had a big offseason. He's a big kid. He's a 260-pound kid, and we're excited about him just because we got 2 more years with him. But he played a very solid game in a very crazy environment. To play at Salem for your first
Yep.
varsity start is not, it's not an easy task, and he handled it very well, from the pregame crowd to just all the different looks that he saw up front. We're very proud of those 3 guys specifically.
Before we get to PH, I want to say that Coach Lovelace does not get my questions ahead of time, just like anybody does, and I ask them on the fly, and they're really good at adjusting and mentioning names when they might not have been told they were going to mention names. So I definitely appreciate that. You'd mentioned playing at Salem's not easy. Well, guess what? I don't think it's easy to play at City Stadium either. Even though not every bleacher is going to be taken, it's still a intimidating place to play. Uh, is that a good thing for you guys, or I mean, because you got a lot of younger kids?
Yeah, it might be an unpopular opinion, but I don't really care. And as City Stadium's a great venue, we absolutely love it. I'm sure Coach Bradley over at Heritage will feel the same way as I do. We don't want it to feel like a neutral site game. And for us, we don't get a lot of chances to get over there and practice. I think me and Coach Bradley both try to steal some moments, during the preseason and during the season when we can get over there and practice. But we have to travel to City Stadium just like the team that we're
Yep.
playing. Our travel is only 5 minutes down the road compared to PH coming an hour and 10 minutes down the road. But for our guys, it's going to be the first time we've walked into City Stadium this year, just like it's the first time PH has walked into City Stadium. So we try to get there early and really wrap our mind around what the venue looks like. We had all away games to this point. We had 2 away scrimmages, and we were away at Salem last week. And we treat playing at City Stadium like an away game because that's not what we practice on a daily basis. So we try to do a good job of really painting a picture of what the environment and the landscape is going to look like. But at the same time, we also preach to our guys that none of that matters.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if we're playing in a gravel parking lot or if we're playing, at City Stadium or Salem. We want to execute and give our best effort.
Alan Fiddler's the head coach at Patrick Henry. You were the head coach at William Fleming for a bit. Do you have any advantage with Roanoke City's teams at this point?
I think we know each other well from just the standpoint of what we like to do, for our football teams and as a football coach. Coach Fiddler's great on offense and calling plays, and he's always got kids who play hard for him. I don't think Coach Fiddler has ever gone a game without figuring out kind of what he needs to do to move the ball against you on offense. So we know that on the defensive side, we know that they're going to have some successful plays, and he's going to have some good timing and some great play calls. It's all about just kind of weathering the storm, and every game kind of settles in at some point. And for us, we want to be able to establish that run game. So when it is time to settle in, hanging your hat on running the football is just a more comfortable place to settle. And that's our happy spot, on Friday night. And we hope to get there fast, knowing that it's going to take a 4-quarter effort against a team that can strike so fast like PH.
Okay, so I'm going to give a scenario here, and I think we're both going to probably agree with it. You might not be up 20 on PH at any point. So if you're not up by 20, as long as you're close, what I'm hearing is that's kind of where we want to be. Am I hearing correctly?
You are. For us, we want to establish an identity up front, and I think every football coach knows that, when the team is running the ball consistently on you, it just feels different than when they're throwing it around. And we realize that you can throw it around and make a few plays, but with the game, when the dust settles, it's going to be who can establish an identity up front. And we want to make sure that when we get to that moment, we've established ourselves, on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And we feel like that's more sustainable, and that's where we want to be. 2
more questions before keys to the game. Always appreciate it. What stands out about PH that people should take note of?
They're very fast. They got a big running back. Demarion Purdue is his name, number 23. He was actually he played on the Fleming Middle School team when I was there years ago. So he's been a player for a while now. And then Cameron Harrison, their receiver, committed to Syracuse. He's been the 5A 100 and 200 meter champ the last couple of years. He's gonna be the fastest kid that we play all season long. And he's just one of those kids that, every time he touches the ball on special teams, and if he gets an interception on defense, and if they throw him a screen or if they throw him a 40-yard bomb, he can score from anywhere in a lot of different ways. And we got to make tackles all night. Someone had asked earlier, like, do you got a specific corner that you're going to put on this kid? And for me, it was like, I don't think that there's one corner who can ever guard him. I think it's going to take 11 people on defense flying to the ball and bringing this guy to the ground, because it can't just be done with one person. So a very unique test, a different test from, what we saw last week at Salem, but we got a lot of respect for PH, and we know how dangerous they are. And we know that we'll have our hands full and our work cut out for us on Friday.
I don't care if you're a 5A, 6A, 4A, 3A, 2A, 1A team. I think if you have a receiver that's going to play at a Division I or even playing at the next level in college, I think that says a lot about your line and quarterback too, because like I said earlier about the special teams, I think throwing the ball in high school is difficult.
It is 100% difficult. From the decisions that the quarterback is making on his reads, and so much can happen from just a tip pass to, a wide receiver breaking the wrong way.
Yep.
It's a dangerous thing to do. So when you do have someone like him that you can throw to, that's going to go play at a high level like Syracuse, it's every time he touches the ball, you hold your breath. So it's got to be a collective effort. We've been talking that all week long, how, whether it's the defensive line, rushing the quarterback or making him uncomfortable, and whether it's linebackers getting hands on this kid and rerouting him before the ball is thrown. It's going to take such a collective effort, before the ball even gets to him, to help us out as much as possible on the defensive end.
It's funny, before I ask you one of the last questions, I'm not trying to show off, but I'm an old guy. And, I think a lot of people think of Syracuse as a basketball school because they've been so good at it. But that school also produced Jim Brown, Donovan McNabb, and Marvin Harrison.
That's
And
right.
those three guys aren't bad.
Not at all. I think that it's. I got a former player from William Fleming, Malachi Coleman, who was running back there during my times, and he's there now. So I got a good reason to kind of cheer for the Qs, and it's been some studs that's come through, and I think I love their coach Fran Brown, and
Yep.
I think they're really rolling, and I know the score from this weekend's game against Tennessee might not show it, but we're talking about a top-notch program, and talking about a top-notch kid that's going to be playing for those guys next year.
You mentioned it being at William Fleming. Why are you a better coach now at EC Glass than you were at Fleming, or what are you better at? I should say, maybe.
Man, that's a great question. I think every coach, coaching is such a look in the mirror job. There's not many jobs that that you're self-evaluating as much and often as you are as a coach. For us, we're self-evaluating, every single week, every single Friday night, after these games end. And a lot about your job is not always displayed on the scoreboard. Even though it feels that way, it's easy to look at the scoreboard and to think, I'm doing great or I'm doing bad, based on what that scoreboard says.
That's how the layman's judging you.
That's how the layman's judge,
Yep.
and I think the one thing that most folks don't realize is that, for us as coaches, the routine never changes. It doesn't matter whether we're, beating Salem or losing to Salem. Our Friday night and Saturday morning and Sunday meetings, they look exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
There's never time to rest. You're always trying to find what you did wrong, and you're always trying to, obsessively get better at those things. I think that, we do remind ourselves to have fun doing this. That was one of the things we spoke about at Media Day, is that, this is a game.
Mm-hmm.
And although we got a lot of serious stakes and serious emotions and time that we put into this thing, we can't ever forget to smile and have fun. We always walk the field before we play every week. And when we walked the field at Salem last week, I took a good moment to just look around and just be thankful for, to be able to be a coach in this game that we love so much, and to have such a direct influence and effect on our young men. It just can't be overstated how important that is. And despite what the scoreboard ever says, and I think that's, it's one of the things that will make me I don't know if I'm a better coach, but I'm a little more mentally stable,
Mm-hmm.
than I was at Fleming. And I think it's, just soaking in the moment and realizing, big picture, that I'm doing exactly what I always dreamed of doing. And I'm just so thankful for that.
So more maybe maturity.
More maturity. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
And not being so results based.
Sure.
And just really, really focusing in on, what I feel is my calling. And I don't think that your results really ever, change the direction of where you're called to be.
Well, I mean, I think the results thing is, if you're 14-0 and you won average games by 30 points, why didn't you win the average by 31? A coach is always, I feel like, going to needle themselves, even if they went unblemished.
That's exactly right.
So
That's 100% true.
anyway,
And that's a dangerous thing. I think you always have to manage that. And it's the same with kids. Every single Friday we got we got all the cut ups of the things we did wrong, but you also can't forget to tell your guys that they did some things right too.
right. Yep. Yep.
And I think that's something we're really trying to focus on this year, is not giving too many pats on the back, but really letting our guys understand that, it's enjoy this time with your teammates and your coaches and your families. And we still want to be obsessed about getting better, but we can't forget that we got a lot of people who are loving us through this thing, and we want to soak up those moments as much as possible.
I'm going to ask about keys to the game, but you brought it up real quick about needing to give more pats on the back. Do you think that's a little bit generational too? I mean, how many pats on the back did you get in high school versus to how many are you giving? Is it a differentiating in the number? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. It's such different times now,
Sure.
than back then, and and again, I go back to my father being a drill sergeant, and he told us he loved us all the time, but a lot of that time it was correction and
Yep.
and how we needed to do things and how we wanted us to do things, and I think when your kids know that you love them, it makes it a little bit easier to walk that line,
Sure.
and that's one of the things that we're doing. It's a tough thing to balance, and I don't think I got it all the way figured out yet. But we're telling guys that we're pushing them this hard because we love them, and we're trying to show that we love them, and keep the level high of what we're demanding of them every day.
Before we get the keys to the game, because I promise it's coming. But the weird thing to me is back when you were playing and when I was, of playing age, we didn't have social media to pat us on the back. Nowadays, if a kid puts their highlight video from Huddle on Twitter, they got 100 people patting them on the back. But guess what? They may know two of them. It may be
And
98
and I
people
think
they
that's the
don't know.
thing is you might have put a highlight tape of your 4 or 5 good plays, but that doesn't mean that you played a clean game. Those could have been
Sure.
the only 4 or 5 good plays that you had, and we have such a culture of that.
Hmm.
We have such a culture of just like instant gratification.
Yep.
I mean, it's times where we're literally we're just fresh off the bus and someone's already got a highlight tape up, and there's 20 people on the sideline with cameras who are
Yep.
recording everything that's going on, and it's such an instant gratification world that some of the qualities like working hard and still not being able to get what you want, and sometimes you don't reap the you don't get exactly what you want even though you're putting in all this labor to get it. Those are some qualities that are somewhat lost in this generation.
But that's
um,
that's the challenge too. Real quick, you said that if they make 4 or 5 good plays and they put it on, well, I said that if they make 4 or 5 good plays and they put it on their social media, that may be the only good 4 or 5 plays they made. But if you're going to have to encourage them, you've got to encourage them when they make a play that is not Huddle worthy of Twitter. You know what I'm saying?
that's exactly right. That's
So
exactly right.
yeah, I mean, dude, we could talk about that one for 300 years probably and
Yeah,
still
it
not
can
have an
never
answer.
stop.
So, offensively, defensively, and special teams, though, what's one thing you guys have to do to be 2-0?
On special teams, we really got to make tackles, man. Like I said, I think the defensive special teams, kickoff and punt are the absolute most important, just because other teams can put up points on the board for those. They got some skill guys who can really take it the distance. So we've got to do an awesome job of making tackles on their kids. We got to take care of the football on offense, and we didn't have any turnovers last week. So clearly, that's a key for us, and then establishing an identity in the run game. And like I said, this thing's going to settle down somewhere in the mid second quarter, and we want it to settle down with us being able to move the ball, effectively by running the football and taking care of it. And then defensively, like I said, it's going to take a huge effort from everyone involved to slow them down, to slow down their pass game, to slow down their run game, to slow down their screen game. I think PH is exceptional at running screens. I know they take a lot of time practicing and mastering these screens, and that's something that we're going to have to be great at. They're big up front and they play hard. So, we're going to have our work cut out for us. Much different team than Salem, but they're very scary for some different reasons.
Always appreciate you. Hopefully, we'll do this again next week.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you too.